Okay, thank you. Here we are again. We're doing a take two. We're having some technical issues, but I'd like to once again say a big hello and thank you to my friend. I was going to call him Mike, but it's Mikkel Thorup. Thank you for joining me today.
Yes, thank you very much for having me. And just a little bit of context, Yarrow was giving me a hard time about my name before we joined. You shouldn't be giving anyone a hard time because your name is very unique on its own as well. So,
yes, it's true. There's not many Yarrows, but I haven't met that many Mikkels. Maybe I haven't gone to the right countries for that. And you would meet some Yarrows in Ukraine.
Canadian with Danish heritage. So, I mean, if you go to Denmark, I think you will meet lots. Not that I speak Danish or have a big relationship with Denmark at all, but yeah, named after my great-grandfather.
Nice. Okay. And similar for me, if you go to Ukraine, you would meet some Yarrows. And I'm a Canadian with the Ukrainian background there, so similar but different. Mikkel, why are you here? So I've grabbed Mikkel for several reasons. The main one is his expertise, his speciality is this very interesting, very modern topic of where is the best place to go for all these different aspects of your tax structure, your business structure, your banking structure. Where even do you want to live on the planet, since digital nomadism obviously is especially huge now after COVID, remote work lifestyle. I personally have been a digital nomad and traveled a lot since my sort of early 20s. So it's a 20-year journey for me. But a lot of people listening in are just first now realizing the potential to be anywhere, run their business. And of course, where do you put your bank account? Where do you pay taxes? These are all the questions that Mikkel is very, very good at answering and has an entire business around. So I want to dive into your background, Mikkel, but perhaps just to give a little bit more context beyond what I just said, what else should we know about you?
Okay, well, I guess the structure of my business, or what do I actually do for a living, is I help Americans and Canadians, yes, Europeans and Australians and other people, but mostly Americans and Canadians to move overseas. Now, whether that be themselves, their physical body, move overseas, or that is their company structure, or that is their wealth, we help them move abroad. And we do this for a number of reasons, which we can dissect in this interview, mostly because of, lifestyle, tax reasons. We're always doing it in a legal and tax efficient manner. We do it for asset protection reasons. There's many things that people might want to do. But yeah, I'm happy to get into my backstory and how I learned these things and how I help people, and hopefully give some tips and tricks and some value for the listeners today.
Yeah, before we do that, let's answer the most important question. Why would you want to answer these questions we're talking about? Besides, obviously, let's say I want to be like you. I want to move to Panama. What should I be thinking about, and why would I approach someone like yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay, so as a desire for wanting to move overseas, I can talk about, my personal desire, but I can also talk from the many clients that I've worked with. A lot of people do not like the political situations that's happening in North America right now. They don't agree with where their tax dollars are spent. They might not identify with these types of policies that are going on. Comes up on basically a daily basis for me. The other things are people want to go somewhere with a better climate. Maybe they want to go with warmer weather. I mean, as Canadians, I think that is very easily understood. Instead of spending 7 months in 3 feet of snow every single year, we can be down in Panama, we can be on the Caribbean, we can be drinking Aperol Spritz in the sunshine and having a nice life. Then there's just the tax issue itself, that as I hinted on. If you don't want your tax dollars spent on funding wars or projects that you don't like, maybe you want to make sure that there's more money that you can invest back into your business to grow your business, then doing it in an offshore jurisdiction is certainly a way to do it.
Okay. I'm going to go into one question that I feel is quite topical now too. Cryptocurrency. It doesn't have to be specifically about cryptocurrency, but I know a lot of people right now are dabbling in that space. It's creating a new source of income. Obviously, the tax laws around cryptocurrency are quite underdeveloped, let's say, in depending where you are. Do people come to you too because they have unique asset classes or unique sources of revenue, and they want to simplify their life in some ways as well? Like, I know you're talking about political changes, weather changes, lifestyle changes, but from a purely financial standpoint, is that often one of the main reasons to look at doing some kind of offshore setup?
I do have a lot of people who are crypto investors, early investors who have made hundreds of thousands, millions, hundreds of millions of dollars in cryptocurrency. So it is something that we certainly look at. I would say that it's not exclusively what I work in, although I am extremely familiar with it. I've been in crypto for over 5 years myself and done very, very well. I also have structures and tools in the toolbox that can help people who do crypto, but I wouldn't brand myself as a crypto only kind of guy. As I said, I think it's one aspect, and with that, we have strategies that deal with that, but also people who are not yet into it, I can help bring them in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I guess if we broaden that out, though, to not just crypto, if we're talking anything, I could have just sold my business, or I expect to sell my business. I might have angel investments, and I expect them to, vest at some point.
Absolutely. So highly appreciated assets, definitely we deal with that, whether that be real estate, like apartment complexes. I have a client who's worth over $200 million. He bought his apartments in the early 80s, late 70s, and we're looking at massive gains. So how do we structure something like that? How do we make sure that we delay or offset the taxes? I mean, those are pretty advanced topics, but those are things that we deal with. So whether that's real estate in this example or crypto in your example, it does come up on a very regular basis.
Okay. Now, I know for people listening in, they're thinking, oh, does that mean Mikkel is a lawyer or an accountant or both? Because that would be the default places we'd go to get answers to these kind of questions. But I don't think that's really a full answer, is it? Because that's not what you are.
I think that to answer that question, you should ask me about my backstory, which will pretty much answer itself on that topic.
Well, you could lead the podcast for me, Mikkel. Let's go back in time.
I have my own podcast, so I'm very good at asking questions. And if you don't ask the question, I will ask it for you, Yarrow. Be careful.
Okay. Well, I'm the host. What I'm curious about, you're going to answer, all right, Mikkel? So let's go back in time. Where were you born and raised?
All right. So I'm born and raised in southwestern Ontario, and what happened was when I was a child, I was diagnosed with a learning disability. And I was in grade 3, and the teacher pulled me out of class one day, and they took me to a little room, and the principal and the resource teacher, and I think maybe the vice principal were there, and they sat me down, and they said, Mikkel, something doesn't work quite right in your brain, and what we want to do is we want to send you to a special school for special boys. And that's what they did, Yarrow. Every day for 3 years, I got on a little white bus. I took a little white bus across town, and I went to this special school. Now, only problem was it actually was not a special school. It was a regular school with a special class. So you can probably imagine what happened. I got picked on a ton. I got in fights. I got bullied. Tons of terrible things. Now, this is not a poor Mikkel, woe is me, victim type of thing. I am certainly no victim, and I definitely gave as good as I got. There's no question about that. But I went to this special school for 3 years. I absolutely hated the experience. I used to come home just hating school on all fronts. But eventually I got to go back to my neighborhood school, and I got to see all of my friends, and I was so excited. I was like, wow, my friends will have missed me. They haven't seen me in 3 years. Okay, maybe I saw them on summer break or something like that. But for a lot of them, I hadn't seen them for 3 years. So you can probably once again guess what happened. All the kids started, whispering and gossiping. Oh, I know, Mikkel. He went to some retard school. 1980s, totally politically correct. Kids are very sensitive, politically correct kids, absolutely. But had a difficult time through grades 7 and 8 and basically stopped going to classes at that age. And fast forward, I somehow made it into high school. They would send me to summer school, and then I'd fail summer school, and then they'd send me back to class, and I'd fail that, but squeak my way into high school, and it was the same type of thing. So I ended up stopped going to school when I was 12 years old, and I officially dropped out when I was 15 years old. And I started traveling the world not shortly after that. And when I started traveling, I actually met so many amazing people who were learning things and experience things in a completely different manner, in ways that I had never seen before, something that in my small town was not common at all. And I felt like, wow, I've met my peeps. Like, these are my people for sure. And I decided that I wanted to dedicate my life to that. So fast forward to today, and I have not stopped traveling. Basically, for 21 years, I have been traveling around the world. I have circumnavigated the globe over 400 times. I've visited over 105, 106 countries, something like that. I've lived in 9 countries. And from the personal side, as we said earlier, I'm Canadian with Danish heritage. My wife is from mainland China. We met in Germany. We got married in Africa. My daughter was born in the Middle East. My son was born in Brazil. And today, as I'm speaking to you, I'm in Panama. We have a home here in Panama. We have a few homes around the world. And that's what I do. I help other people to move overseas. Now, I do it in a legal and tax efficient manner. I do the planning aspect, so I work very hard on the 40,000 foot view. But for the filing and everything like that, I work with a CPA who I've partnered with. I work with lawyers who I've partnered with on these types of things. So I will often create the plan. Then we go, okay, is it compliant? Is it legal? Does it follow immigration? Does it follow tax law? And we'll do kind of a team-based approach for all of my clients. So there might be a Zoom call with a Panama lawyer, a US lawyer, a US CPA, me, the client, and the spouse. We might have 5, 6 people on a call and then tackle these types of problems. How do we do this from the lifestyle, from the immigration, from the service provider, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you can think of me as a quarterback. I've been doing this for a very long time. I have been very fortunate to learn a lot of these things, either through my own experiences or with mentorship or with an obscene amount of reading and studying and going through IRS websites, which is extraordinarily boring, but kind of necessary. And yeah, so I kind of put these things together. So I would say I am a very unique person because I don't think this job, quote unquote, really exists anywhere else. I kind of created it out of thin air because I saw a need in the marketplace. Does that make sense?
That's a very long answer to the one question I had there. But I appreciate it because that gives me so many places to take this now, Mikkel. I'm very curious about a lot of that.
Well, and earlier before the interview, you said, well, if you give really short interviews, it's going to be, maybe like 30 minutes, 60 minutes. I'm like, I don't think you're going to have a problem with that with me. So.
Okay, good. No, you've given me a fantastic overview of where I can dive in now. So interesting with your family, where being born in different places, meeting in different places, coming from different backgrounds. I love that. But I want to dive in maybe before this family even existed and go back to that phase where you just met people like yourself, as you described it, living in this sort of, I guess you'd call it an alternative lifestyle at the time. Back then, and maybe if I can timestamp this or maybe put an age on it, I'm guessing it might have been early 20s or something like that.
Yeah, late teens. I think I started Well, actually, I know I started traveling first time in the year 2000. So that's how I know it's very easy to count 21 years. So
okay, perfect. So at that stage in your life, and you're kind of having your eyes opened, was there a career path in mind for you back then, or a business idea that you might have had, or what was your
not even
thoughts
close.
For the future?
Oh, Yarrow. No, I made every mistake under the books. I was just a vagabond and traveling around the world. For the first couple of years, I had a big red backpack and I was just traveling. I spent 5 months. Well, first trip was about 3 weeks, 4 weeks in Western Europe. Then I did 5 months in Western Europe and in North Africa. I actually took a camel from Morocco for 3 days and went to Algeria on a camel and then turned around and came back. I had no idea what I was doing. I was just out there having adventure. I took 18 months and hitchhiked through Central and South America in 2003, 2004, something like that. So, yeah, I would love to say that I had everything figured out way back then and I knew exactly what I was going to do for a living and how I was going to help people. But I was just a kid having fun.
Which begs the question then, how did you fund this? Was it a traditional, you'd get a job working at a bar in a place you were, save some money, take, backpacking to the next spot? Is that pretty much how it went?
Exactly like that. Whatever random odd jobs. Like, okay, first off the bat, I started working when I was 12 years old. I was picking the weeds out of bean fields all summer long, and then I was babysitting. When I was about 15, 16, I was working at a grocery store. So I had money from those first, working as a teenager type of thing. And then on the road, I would stop. So I lived in New Zealand for 12 months. I lived in Australia for 3 years. I lived in Singapore for a year. These places I worked. I'm an expat. I don't really think of myself too much as a digital nomad because I often have a home base that I travel out from. So that, yeah, okay, I was in Australia for 3 years, but I went to Fiji 5 times. I went to Vanuatu. I went to Tonga. I went to Southeast Asia. I went to Hawaii, all over Australia, a whole bunch of other random countries in the South Pacific because that was easy for me. But no, I was working at whatever type of job would pay the most amount of money.
I wonder if we crossed paths when I was in my early 20s in Brisbane, Australia, and you would have been working at a bar or something, and I had no idea we'd be talking here, Mikkel. Given what you now know and your expertise, if we can go back to that period, so, even how does a Canadian, for example, get to stay for 3 years in Australia? You must have started to run up against these questions around residency, how to earn a living, where are you paying taxes? So was there a sense of gaining that skill set at that time in your life?
That one is a yes, because, okay, we can even track things earlier than that. I remember when I was a teenager and I started learning about taxation for the first time, and I was like, this is a giant scam. I don't want to support anything like this. So I started figuring out retirement accounts, putting all of my money into retirement accounts, and then I started pulling it out in periods of time where I had zero income, where I was traveling for a year straight. So I was already trying to game the system and find loopholes, legal loopholes, on how to pay zero taxes. When I was in Australia, I went in as it was called a working holiday visa. So New Zealand and Australia, I did a working holiday visa. Then I had found a job, a company who liked me, and they wanted to sponsor me. So what happened was we went on a bridging visa. I actually went on a tourist visa, then on a bridging visa. Then I applied for at the time it was called a 457 skilled migrant worker visa. It's since been replaced with another type of migrant worker visa, but they had a short list of skills, and I went through that process. So I was already starting to figure out immigration work, when I was in my early 20s, and how these things work, how they fit together, all of this. And it was similar in Singapore and how I ended up getting a job there through these types of things. So yeah, I was building up the skill set right from a teenage years through my 20s, through my 30s, and I'm almost 40 now. So yeah.
Okay. While you were doing all these travels, I mean, at some point, I don't know, you're hitting 25 years old, 26 years old. Are you thinking, I might have to at some point start a career path? Or are you thinking, no, for the rest of my life, I can just string together jobs and live in, a year here and a year there in different countries around the world? What was your mindset then?
So I did have a career, but it's not the career that I'm in now. And I don't really talk about it much because it's not relevant. But I did try many different things, and I was not completely aimless by any means. Just things that did not work out or I fell flat on my face with. But I believe myself to be very purpose-driven and very purposeful about everything that I do. So there's never been a moment in my life where I was lost or I didn't know what I was doing. Mm-hmm. Does that kind of make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes sense. So I'm going to assume you were like a male stripper back then. That's why it's not relevant to that.
Magic Mike, no, that's where it came from. Nice, thanks.
Yeah, Magic Mikkel. No, but anyway, I can understand where you were developing a skill set because it did pay the bills, and you were probably happy in learning, and you were able to travel. At some point, though, you must have gone. There must have been a switch. I'm going to leave this career path and start entering. I'm going to call it maybe consulting to start with. I don't know. Maybe take us forward. I don't know what time was the first time you ever supported someone else with the skills you had developed. And maybe I'm jumping ahead too far. Like we're talking about taxes here, but residencies, multiple passports, there's a lot of variables to all of this too. So did you keep learning that as you continued to travel around the world?
Absolutely. Okay. First of all, I mean, my main skill set is how to live in another country. Now, you might not think of that as a skill set, but I promise you it is. There are so many mental things that you have to deal with, family adjustment, emotions and languages and so many things. So that I have been doing nonstop, around the clock, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for 21 years. So there's not many people, I think, who have done that. Okay, maybe they've moved to one country and they migrated there and they've lived there for many, many years. But building their lives in 9 different countries in 21 years, I think that it's a pretty rare skill set. Then I do have a background in finance. I got really geeked out in finance. I did trade options for 7 years, so I was in the derivatives market. I did very, very well in that and made a lot of money and was able to pivot from there. Personally, I don't trade derivatives anymore. I've switched my investment thesis a little bit, but I did have a solid chunk of my life during this where finance was a massive thing to me. I also tried other entrepreneurial ventures, like things in the fitness industry. I was big into fitness. I'm still big into fitness and health and biohacking and these types of things. I tried businesses like that. It was not what I wanted it to be. So, it was a good learning opportunity in how to build a business, how to structure things, branding, et cetera, et cetera. So I probably had a half a dozen of those, I don't know, mistakes, for lack of a better word. I wouldn't really call them mistakes because they're all opportunities to learn. But eventually I decided, okay, well, what do I want to do? Well, I really like money. I really like finance and investing and entrepreneurship. And I really like travel and living overseas. So being the really creative person that I am, I went out there and created a podcast called the Expat Money Show. Yes, I know, very original. I took my 2 favorite ideas and I joined them together, and I made a business out of it. It really started as just as an opportunity to interview awesome people. Like, Yarrow, you were on my show maybe 3 or 4 months ago, and we had a great conversation, and I got to learn so much from you. Well, I've had people like Grant Cardone on my show. I've had Jim Rogers. I've had Richard Mayberry, who was a massive influence on my life. We've been doing the podcast for going on 6 years now, 5-6 years, something like that. And I've had, 170 some odd episodes. So I've met so many cool people around the world and been able to pick their brains and learn from them and develop relationships with them. I just got back from 3 weeks in Colombia, actually, where I was visiting a podcast guest. He was on the podcast maybe 6 or 8 months ago, and I wanted to strengthen that relationship. So I flew down there with my whole family, my wife and my kids and my mother, and even our nanny. We brought them. We went down to Colombia for 3 weeks and traveled and built that relationship and learned from him. So, yeah, so there's lots of pieces to this to bring us to kind of where I am today. Yes, I can look back and connect the dots. This made sense, this made sense, this made sense. But at the time as I was doing it, no, I had no idea. And I think anyone who is arrogant enough to tell you that they did is lying.
True. Yeah, life can be dynamic. So correct me if I'm wrong then, does starting the podcast and you just going out there and just talking about how to live somewhere else and all the variables and things you'd learned about that, did someone then just email you and say, hey, could you help me do something with my own moving overseas? And then you went like, yes, I can. And then you thought, maybe there's a business here. Is that how it evolved?
Yeah, I think that I was already doing coaching and consulting for business development, helping other people to start businesses because I had started several myself. So I was already doing consulting, and then I pivoted more to helping people with this. But right at the very beginning, I was doing consulting. Then a couple of years in, I got an offer to take over the largest offshore website in the world. It was a brand that has been going since the mid-90s with millions of followers. So I took that over for a couple of years. I actually joint ventured with the owners, completely ran that. The site has been featured in things like the 4-Hour Work Week and things like that. So a very well-known brand in the offshore space. I ran that for a couple of years. I took it from not a great business to a excellent business and revitalized the brand and everything. And then...
Do you mind if I just stop you on that one? I'm always curious when someone says you took it from this to this, and I'm getting the impression you can't drop the actual name of the company, but regardless... what did you do to, restart it and revamp it?
Wow. Okay. It was a blog with a really crummy newsletter. I completely redid the newsletter. I redid the branding. I redid the color scheme, the Tagline, I brought everything into focus of what the original idea of the concept was. It had turned into a mess of a million different things, and I focused it back on the offshore market. So specifically tax planning, offshore structuring, international banking, golds and precious metals normally held in an offshore vault, foreign real estate, these types of core tenements for the offshore, asset protection, these things. I got rid of, although there was a travel flavor, I wasn't like top 10 things to do in this country, or, you know, how to have a great vacation in Disneyland. It's like, this has nothing to do with what we're doing. So there was tens of thousands of articles in there. We went through manually, one by one, and redid all of the SEO, got rid of all of the posts that were not performing, that had nothing to do with us, that were taking us in different tangents. We started writing cornerstone content. So we would do articles that were 5,000, 10,000 words long. We did internal linking for all of these. There was articles out there that had no images, or it wasn't formatted correctly, or there were broken links in there. I gutted it. They basically took the website back down to the skeleton and rebuilt it from scratch. I had a full-time team just of writers and bloggers and SEO specialists to redo all of this. But in 2 years, Yarrow, I increased the organic SEO over 500%. I did over 600%, about 650% of our email newsletter. I increased our open rate, our click-through rate. I took it to a very profitable business. There were many things that I cannot disclose on this interview, but people will probably know the website, or if you go out there and Google my name, you'll still see, because I wrote literally hundreds of articles on there, which I believe are still the most popular articles on the website. So I think I probably get about 3 million people a year who read my stuff right now on that website.
Wow. Okay, so you definitely had not just an expat skill set, you had an online marketing skill set,
an
an
SEO
SEO
say,
skill set.
Those are my hard skills, or I guess those are soft skills on digital marketing, copywriting, sales, technology. I mean, those are types of things that I developed over building multiple businesses, even if the businesses did fail.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I can imagine when you say fail too, it probably wasn't like you were making some money from them, but you just decided you didn't want to keep going in that direction.
Yeah, or if it wasn't a viable business model, or, you know, we got halfway down the launch and decided it was going to be too much capital, or I couldn't. I mean, if I'm going to look at an idea, I don't really want to put anything into my business unless I see a very clear path to $1 million. So if I have people who proposition me every day on how to add something or rep them or affiliate for them, I mean, if I can't see a clear path to $1 million, don't want anything to do. I'm not trying to create a job. I'm not a solopreneur, or I want to be self-employed or something. I'm not self-employed. I mean, I have a staff of 7, 8 people who work under me and depend on me. I need to produce. So there's an opportunity cost to everything we do. Does that make sense?
Okay, totally. So take us forward. So you took on this role, you turned around this big web presence online in the, you said it was an overseas, I guess like an information site for people about moving overseas.
Yep.
Then you left that at some point. Is that right?
Correct. Beginning of this year, I terminated my contract. I said goodbye to my partners. We left on good terms. There was no animosity or anything like that. I still talk to the owners maybe not on a regular basis, but I still talk to them and still friends. And, when my son was born and they were sending me well wishes and everything. But I really know that having business partners is maybe not for me. Or if I'm going to have business partners, it has to be under a certain type of context. I'm a little bit hyper. And I'm kind of do everything at once, and I move really, really fast. And if people can't keep up with me, then it can cause a lot of problems. So for me, it didn't make sense to stay in that organization. I think I outgrew them very, very fast. And I went back out on my own. So I revamped the podcast and now have branded everything Expat Money. So we have the Expat Money Forum. If you guys go to expatmoneyforum.com, it'll redirect you to our private Facebook group. We have the Expat Money Show podcast. We have books, online programs, lots of different types of things. And then, of course, the consulting, which is what we've been chatting about today.
Okay. Yeah, I'd love to dive in more to the specifics of what you support people with. Before we do that, can we just go back? I'd like to talk about your family, if we may.
Sure.
Cover that part, because you mentioned you met your wife in Germany, but she's from mainland China, if I'm remembering correctly.
Correct.
Your two children are born in different countries. How do you look at the whole aspect of the family? Because most people expect when you meet someone, sure, you might travel together for a while, but at some point you come home, wherever home might be, you settle down. When you start making babies, that's it. You've locked yourself into that place that you want your kids to go to the same school. You want them to have a social life. Do you agree with all that, or how have you structured your family life?
I have been told that since the day that I started traveling. People are like, oh, this is great, Mikkel. Do it while you're young, because when you get older, you're not going to be able to do these because you're going to have a career or you're going to have kids or you're at school or everything like that. Well, who's laughing now? Because my kids are on the road with me. They've traveled a ridiculous amount. My daughter is 5 years old. She's been to 14 or 15 countries. She speaks 3 languages fluently. She speaks Spanish, English, and Mandarin Chinese fluently, like near native level or native level, with accent, with everything. She's now learning German. We homeschool our kids. We are a very international family, and I've never found the need to conform to what other people think or believe that I should do for my family or for myself.
So and your wife obviously has to agree with this sort of lifestyle choice. And maybe this is too early to answer the question too, because I'm guessing at 5 years old, maybe when they start becoming teenagers, that's when like, Dad, I want to stay with my friends. I don't want to go to another country, but you'll kind of cross that bridge, when you come to it. And you mentioned a nanny too. So I'm guessing that certainly would help with just the extra support for, helping with the kids and while you're running your business and doing everything. Is there anything though that stands out that might be a myth for the kind of regular society that has this belief around what you can and can't do with a family that you feel just is not true?
Okay, well, I mean, when I was growing up, my parents told me, Mikkel, you can do anything you want in the world. Now, as cliche as that sounds, and probably everyone was told the same thing, I actually believed them. And I actually went out there and did it. And I think you can too. Like, everybody can. I think that there are strategies, there are tips, there's support, and there's ways to do this. And I don't think that you need to go out there and make every single mistake in the book, which is what I did over building up this knowledge base and this experience. You can work with someone who has already gone through these mistakes. I think it's a common misnomer where people say, oh, the best way to learn is from your mistakes. No, that's the worst way to learn. Learn from someone else's mistakes. If you can learn from someone else's mistakes, that is a massive shortcut. So, take me as an example. If you want to move overseas, you work with me, I will handhold you and walk you through the process. I will save you a ridiculous amount of time, energy, effort, money, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I will make sure that you don't fall into the big pitfalls that happen. Are there going to be challenges? Yes, definitely. Absolutely. I'm not saying that there will not be. It is a challenging thing. But you will have a much better time working with someone who has already done this. And then think, okay, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're starting a business, if you run a startup, well, then what is your time worth? Do you want to go out there and spend 100 hours or 500 hours or 1,000 hours trying to research and learn and do all of these types of things? Say it was 1,000 hours of research and trial and error. What do you make on an hourly basis? Even if you were working in minimum wage, I think that it would still be quite a lot of money. You're still talking tens of thousands of dollars. So do that type of math. If I can save you 90% of the time or 99% of the time, it's probably a very good exchange.
Okay, well, let's just dive into that. Let's play a scenario out here. I'm someone with a family. I've got a business. I've probably got some net worth in assets. I do want to move to another country. I'm completely open to anywhere, but my goals are obviously a good family life, but also a good tax structure, good health system, all these kind of important things to me. How do I begin making this decision? And what's like a checklist of things I should be, investigating? And even if I was to work with you to ask you these questions.
Okay. I don't have an answer to that. And this is why, because I don't have nearly enough information. So what are your hobbies? What do you like to do? What type of business is it? Where are your employees? Where is it structured currently? How is the tax situation? What was your taxable income last year? What about your spouse? What does she do for a living? Is she professionally hired? Is she a doctor or a lawyer where you have to have some type of a license for that type of things? How old are your kids? Do you have boys? Do you have girls? How many kids do you have? What is their school situation? Are they in private school, in international school already? Are they in public school? Are they being homeschooled? Do they play sports? What are their interests? I mean, there's like 9,000 different details that we need to go through before I would ever make a recommendation.
Okay, well, you gave me a checklist of sorts right there, Mikkels.
Well, I'm just rattling off like a couple of dozen things that popped to my head. But I mean, literally, if I was sitting down with a client, we would go through a checklist and we would discuss, and we would spend, the first hour, 2 hours, 3 hours on the phone discussing all these things. I need to get to know you. This is not going to Walmart and picking out a sweater and a pair of slacks. This is going to a tailor and getting a custom-made suit. Do you understand?
Yeah, good way of putting it. But assuming you have a set of criteria in place, what is the decision-making process about? Is it mostly about lifestyle? Is it mostly tax structure? Like, how do you, because I know, I take my own situation, I would be like, okay, I don't want to pay taxes. Let's keep it simple. I want to minimize my taxes as much as I can. I expect to be selling a business or an asset in the future. There'll be capital gains there. I want to minimize that. That being said, I like the freedom to travel, but I also, like you, for many large blocks of time, want to stay in one place and have that consistency as well. But I'd like to optimize what I already have, I guess. I don't want to necessarily uproot everything and throw it all away, but I want to go where it's better taxes. I want to go, all the things. I want the best weather at the best time of year. I want the best financial system, people who are open to cryptocurrencies and not trying to shut them down, say like China, all these kind of things. So how do you, it's a hard question to answer, I can imagine, because it's so bespoke to each individual, but is there even like the three biggest things you have to decide or something like that?
Okay, so first off the bat, there's no such thing as kind of going half offshore. I mean, you're either going to go offshore or you're not going to go offshore, at least to get the type of benefits. Yes, you can open a offshore structure or an offshore bank account, but to really get a lot of the advantages, you really have to go offshore. So it's not like, hey, I would really like to live in Los Angeles, but I would like to move my business overseas and pay zero taxes. No, that's called tax fraud. You're going to end up in a orange jumpsuit. We don't mess with that type of stuff. We just don't. I mean, we don't play in the gray area, and we certainly don't play in the black area. I mean, this is all white labeled, completely legal type of structures that we do. But yeah, as I was saying, we would look at all of these types of things. Now, I do have clients who come to me, hire me for consulting. We look at everything. And you know what? At the end of the day, they decide, it's too much work, or it doesn't fit my lifestyle, or I have aging parents that I don't want to leave. So maybe it's not for me. Or maybe I thought my timeline was 12 months from now, and it's actually 5 years from now. So I help you to make these types of decisions. And it doesn't always have to be, picking up everything and leaving. We do this risk to reward benefit, this cost analysis, all these types of things. And then the countries themselves, a lot of it is a very personal, so it can be a heart issue. We can deal with, certainly, all right, if you come to Costa Rica or Belize or Panama, we can have you pay zero taxes. But if we get you to Colombia or Brazil, I'm just naming countries I've spent a lot of time in this year, these countries, you will be paying taxes, but the lifestyle will be much better and the cost of living is so much lower that you will still end up ahead. There's these different types of mix and match. Maybe it's, spend 183 days in Panama, 3 months in Portugal, and 3 months in Thailand. And you're not a tax resident of Portugal, and you're not a tax resident of Thailand, but you are of Panama, and we follow a territorial tax system, and therefore we get rid of the Panamanian tax. And then how do we deal with the state tax in the United States? How do we deal with the federal tax in the United States? Okay, is there any other countries who claim tax residency for you, or you have a tax home? How do we deal with all of these types of things? So, I'm kind of answering these, Yaro, in a roundabout way, but I'm just trying to make you understand that there are 1,000,001 different possibilities here. And it is really based on the client's exact needs. So I'd really be remiss to kind of go, oh, this is what you do, or this is the best solution. I mean, that's not responsible of me at all.
Got it. Yeah, and it makes complete sense. It's why your service exists, even because you need to have that broad scope of the potentialities to then present, here's the options now, knowing what I know about you. Let's look at the pros and cons of each one, and then you can come to a decision. Where do you want to live? This is where you will be paying taxes. I know you're doing a great job of being specific without being specific. Can we look at just, I guess, the core structure questions? Because and you don't have to give me the specific places that you would choose, but are you deciding between where's my company incorporated? Where's my bank accounts set up? Where do I list a residency for me as an individual? Where do I pay personal taxes? I'm just reading off things I know I currently have as a Canadian. These are all in Canada for me. Mm-hmm. If I was going to shift to offshore, I believe I'm taking all those things and then moving them to one or several countries, and then I would live in these places. Is that a rough list? Am I missing anything?
I think that's a very good list. So let's handle these kind of one by one. So say that I do have a client to me. I'll tell you about the tracks, as I call them, that I take people on. So normally with a client, we're going to be looking at a second residency. So some common ones are Panama, where I am today, Brazil, Colombia, Mexico, Costa Rica, Nicaragua, Belize, these types of countries in the Americas. Also Ecuador, but it doesn't work for a number of reasons, namely how long you have to stay in the country. In Europe, we might be looking at things like Greece or Italy, Portugal, which has actually a non-domiciled tax system. It's called non-dom. It's a tax break for your first 10 years. It is possible to do residencies in a number of other countries in Europe, but some of the tax systems there are horrendous, like Spain. A lot of people have probably heard of the Spanish Golden Visa. They have one of the most abusive and aggressive tax authorities in the world, so it's not somewhere that I usually recommend, but it is an option. I do have literally a client this week who contacted me that they have family in Spain and would love to make that part of the overall structure of things. So we're looking at that. So that's one track, is your residency. That can be a paper residency, that can be where you actually live. And just so we understand, a residency is what we would call a permanent residency in this context. So this is the legal right to live and work in the country. There would be some type of minimum stay in the country, whether that be 1 day or 1 week or 1 month or 6 months or 365 days, which are the cases in some countries. So we would look at some type of either a temporary residency that leads to permanent residency or a direct permanent residency. Second of all would be a second citizenship, especially for my high net worth individuals. You can think of citizenship as not just the travel document that we know as a passport, but it's also the legal right to live and work in the country. And think of it as political insurance. If you don't like what your government is doing and you want to leave, you can go to another country. You can travel on that document. You can participate in their social programs, et cetera, et cetera. We do these normally through citizenship by investment, but we can also do it through naturalization. We can do it through birth tourism. For example, in my case, we did birth tourism for Brazil. We flew down to Brazil. My son was born there. He is now a Brazilian citizen, as well as other citizenships we have through family ties. And then, because I'm the legal guardian of a Brazilian citizen, I can apply for my what's called the family reunification visa, and I can get my permanent residency there with a fast track to Brazilian citizenship. So once I go down there and live there for 2 years, I can get my Brazilian citizenship, and my daughter can get hers in even faster track. It's a 1 year to citizenship. So these are things that most people have no idea. Like, you can't go to an accountant or a lawyer and ask these things. Even immigration lawyers will not have any idea about these things because they're going to specialize in the country that they live in, normally just the country they were born in. So a U.S. immigration lawyer will understand immigration laws for people trying to enter the United States. They are most likely going to have absolutely no idea on how to go to Brazil or Costa Rica or Panama or any of these countries. I do because I've done it. And I work with the local representation in all of these countries. I've gone down to there. I've used their services. I'm like the giant guinea pig who tries all of these types of things. I know who are the good people and trustworthy and who is the scammers and doesn't respond promptly to emails and, have had problems in the past and their licenses are not up to date. I know these types of things because I've had to work with them. So those are two of the first paths. Then we'll work on the tax path. So how are we dealing with your state tax? How are we dealing with the federal tax? How are we dealing with the tax of the country that your new citizenship is in? How are we dealing with the tax of the new residency that you're living in? All of those types of issues. We might look at where are you going to live? So real estate in the country that you're in, whether you are renting or buying. Are you going to rent it and only spend part of the year there? Are we going to put it up on long-term or short-term vacation rentals? Are we going to put it up on Airbnb? What are the taxes in implication? Property taxes, holding taxes, all of these transfer taxes, stamp duty. What do those look like? Do you want to buy multiple properties? What are the currency? How are you transferring the currency down to these countries? If you're buying in a Brazil and it's the real and you're sending from the US dollar, is it a good time to transfer right now? Is it a bad time to transfer right now? Are you transferring through your bank? Are you doing it through a currency brokerage house? What does all of that look like? There's the banking. So what type of offshore bank account are you using? Are you using the bank account in the new country that we got your residency and citizenship in? Are you doing it at a Caribbean country? What are their card programs like? Do they have savings programs? Do they have online banking at all? You might be surprised. There are still lots of banks out there who do not have online banking. You might actually have to fax documents in. Do you want to deal with that? So many things. So many pieces of the puzzle. But that's the type of tracks that I would take people on to work through this.
Okay, so we got residency, we've got passport, we've got banking, we've got tax structure. Yeah, it's a pretty good list. Yeah. I guess we could go.
So you have
company
LLCs, you have
IBCs,
IBCs, you have foundations, you have trusts. So any type of actual structure. We have gold vaults. How is the gold vault held? Personal name or through a structure. We have cryptocurrency. We have merchant accounts. We have brokerage accounts. All of these, where are they structured? What is the tax implications? What are the legal requirements? If you're a U.S. citizen, are you allowed access to this? What are the filing requirements from the U.S. side? Do you have to file an F-bar? What other forms? Does it have to be filed with the Treasury or with the IRS? 1,000,001 things. Sorry to overwhelm you, but...
Okay. No, it's fantastic. This is... That's the specificity that I like to hear.
I want to be as specific as possible without actually giving any recommendations because I just can't. I just can't. Like legally, I have no idea what your situation is, so I just can't.
No, totally understand, and you're giving us the context in which to then go and approach this decision-making process, and that's really what I would love to do on this podcast. So I appreciate that. It sounds like, and maybe we can connect this with the final piece of the puzzle, which as a motivation to do all of this, I know most people approach this and go, I just like to pay less taxes. Or, like you said, I'd like to be living somewhere warm during the colder months, and I want to go back to my home country in, the warmer months. That's where it starts. And then obviously you open this Pandora's box of what you've just already described, the potential places to do all these different things. What then becomes the right motivation, or maybe I should be saying the right person to actually go through with all of this? Is it really just high net worth individuals? Who is it?
All right. What I find is that most people will benefit from these types of things. Now, the degree that you're going to go into it can be based on your net worth. I specifically, for consulting, work with high net worth individuals because they're the ones who can afford to pay tens of thousands of dollars in consulting fees. If your annual income is $50,000, it probably doesn't make sense to hire me on a one-on-one basis. But that doesn't mean that there are not ways that I can help you. For example, we have the community. We have the Expat Money Forum where you can ask questions. We have a podcast with over 170 episodes where we have talked in detail on immigration issues and banking issues and merchant accounts and all these things. On every single episode. So I have episodes that have gone for 2.5 hours. These are like master classes on just one of the things that I've discussed here today. So there's things like that. I have a daily email newsletter where I'm writing about my experiences. So you'll be able to actually see, firsthand what these things look like. I talk about, how I've helped people or the changes that they have made. So even if you come from a modest income background, there are still things that you can do. But let's take all of the monetary issues or tax issues and just put them aside for a second. There is also the personal issues or the personal advantages, I should say, for doing these types of things. So first of all, it's a lot of fun to live overseas. It's exciting, and you get to meet all kinds of new, cool, interesting people. You get to learn a new language, and you get to become bilingual in a lot of cases. And you get to use it in real life circumstances, not just sitting in a classroom like you did in high school and, repeat after me type of things. I mean, you can learn a new language, then go out to the bar and order your drinks and make friends. And like, I have a buddy that I go and shoot pool with, and we speak in Spanish the whole time, and we drink and shoot pool, and I beat the crap out of him in pool, and we laugh about it and joke about it in Spanish. I mean, that's just a cool experience from someone who comes from a monolingual culture. There is the family aspect. Earlier you asked about the kids or, the schooling or things like that. I would invite you not to look at these things as a negative, but as a huge benefit. Look at the education you're going to be able to give your child by them living overseas and being multilingual and putting themselves in situations where they have to make friends with people from all over the world in different cultures and religions and food and history and perspective and how other people think. That's a bonus. That's not a negative. That's not something that you need to be worried about. That's a gift you're going to give your child. I mean, I certainly know that it is for my kids and for all these expats that I work with and people in the expat community. This is a huge thing that we're excited about. I mean, instead of your kid just reading about things in a book, you actually get to take them there and they get to see it with themselves, with their own eyes. That's amazing. Now, for your spouse, you asked earlier, your wife must already be quite adventurous. Well, she is. She was already traveling a lot. But even if your spouse is not, think about this as an opportunity to bond with your spouse. As you go through difficult things, as you go through challenging things, that actually can, in a lot of cases, strengthen your marriage. I know that me and my wife have a really fantastic relationship because we've lived in multiple countries and we've had to change and uproot things and figure out all this logistics. We had to count on one another. And I know that I can count on her because she's shown me that. And she knows that I am a stable and I'm a good provider and I can, although I have lots of crazy ideas, I actually follow through. She knows that I will be there when times get difficult, when things get difficult. So that can strengthen relationships. You're going to be able to make new friends. You have just, I mean, Yarrow, I could go all day long about all the advantages for this type of lifestyle and why I really think it is the best vehicle for freedom and liberty.
Oh, good answer, Mikkel. I appreciate that. You're painting a lovely picture. Obviously, I'm a converted traveler, so I don't need to be sold on that. But the lifestyle aspect of it is not just about saving money. So I do appreciate you highlighting that. But to return to money, I do have a question I do like to ask my guests as we move towards the end of the interview. And this is, I think, especially interesting for a man like yourself who is so aware of opportunity across the entire planet, which, let's face it, not everyone is. How do you invest and use your money? Like, obviously, you have a consultancy and a family to support, but outside of that, are you pouring into crypto? Are you buying property all over the world? Are you buying other businesses? What's your kind of lifestyle in terms of investing look like?
Yes.
Yes, yes, and yes.
Yes, yes, and yes. Okay, Yaro, what I think is the big trend and what I think that people should do and what I am doing with my own is that I believe a lot of walls are being built in the world right now, and they're going up everywhere. And I don't necessarily think that they're just country-based. I think that a lot of it is cultural. I think that we're going to see a resurgence of a lot of cultural divides around the world. So I'm trying to make sure that I have investments, bank accounts, companies, money, gold, real estate, homes on the other side of these walls. So, for example, we own several properties in China. My wife is from mainland China. We've had these in place for many years. China has always had walls up for many, many years, but they are strengthening. I want to make sure that I have assets on the other side of this. We are seeing that Russia, former USSR, are completely different than the US on how they're viewing these types of things, and there are walls being put up there. There is a lot of talk of Russia having their own internet going forward. I think that we're going to see massive problems in the internet. I think that we're going to see a real fracturing of the internet. So I want to make sure that I have assets and opportunities on the other side of that. I think that having a home in Brazil is one country in South America, but there are as many people in Brazil and Portuguese speakers as they are for the rest of South America combined. So although it is one country, it is a big country. It is a giant country. We are buying a home there next year. We have a place here in Panama. We have in China. We're getting in Brazil. We're setting up different things in many different areas of the world. We're buying a place in Turkey next year where we will get citizenship there. I think that we're going to see a resurgence of the Ottoman Empire. So we will have properties there and assets there and furniture and stuff, hard things, tangible things, and bank accounts and currencies. I mean, their currency, the lira, is pretty terrible. But if we have rental properties and we're earning it and we see a bounce back, it could be a very smart move. I have gold stored around the world, coins, bars, collector's items, these types of things. That's how I'm looking at it, as how do I protect myself and my family? I don't think that people need to be as crazy as I am and as obsessed and do everything that I am doing. As I said earlier, I'm a guinea pig, so I try a lot of these things, and then I write about it, and then I speak about it. I'm not an armchair traveler by any means. I really go out there and try these things. But even if you guys start with, one thing, and then, when that's completed, you do another one, and then another one, at the end of a couple of years, you'd be surprised how many things you can have in place. And, for me, it helps me sleep better at night, knowing that my family is protected. I like this type of stuff. I'm a delayed gratification kind of guy. I'm okay with saving and investing. I don't need everything right this second. I can think ahead 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, Like I said, I'm a pretty young guy. I've got young kids. I'm thinking, what is life going to be like for them? What is going to be life like for their kids? So that generational wealth planning and how are things going to be structured in the future. If doors are open right now, then I want to go through, because when the doors close, that's it. I mean, I don't break the law and I don't help anyone to break the law. So these are the time to do these things. If COVID taught us anything, I think it will teach us this.
So just to clarify, I understand what you're saying about doors closing, but to own property in all of these different places, is that purely because you want to, it's like diversification, you're putting assets into different economies, but is there an additional reason politically, geopolitically around that too? Like you can't qualify for something if you don't have a property in all these different countries?
Okay, that's a multifaceted question. So let's take Turkey, for example. Turkey does a citizenship by investment program. It's a real estate purchase. It can be purchased anywhere in the country. Obviously, Istanbul is probably the first place that people would think of. It's where I want. I've been there multiple times. I like the culture. I like the food. I like all these types of things. I want to get Turkish citizenship. I think that an investment in Istanbul and rehabbing it will be a good investment. I think it'll be an asset producing or a cash flowing asset for my portfolio. So I can double up on those types of things. I think that we will say, as I said, a resurgence of the Ottoman Empire. So I want to have access to those. Now, with the passports that I have, maybe I can get in today, but maybe I can't get in tomorrow to some of these countries. So a passport is the negotiation between two countries for being able to go there or not. Now, U.S. used to have a fantastic passport. I would challenge you guys to go and look where it sits on the rankings right now. U.S. citizenship holders are not welcome in a lot of countries right now because of COVID, because of diplomatic relations, because of war, a lot of things that people just can't go to. So there's that. We have strong ties to China, as I said. My wife was born and raised in mainland China. Her first language is Mandarin. My kids speak Mandarin. There's a ton of opportunities there, and there's a ton of negative things there that we have to keep our eye on. But it's somewhere that we normally spend, we usually go to 3-4 times a year. We usually spend at least 1, 2, 3 months in China every single year. So having our own home there with our own stuff, with our own bank accounts where we're paying in the local currency, not in always having to use an overseas credit card and get charged all these types of things. From the privacy, okay, yes, the Chinese government is going to know what we're doing, but the local government here in Panama will have no idea where I'm spending my money. Visa and MasterCard will have no idea. So there's that. We go to Ukraine next year. I'm very excited. Ukraine is your heritage. So I'm really excited to see what that is like and visit Russia and visit some of the former USSR countries. What is that going to look like? I want to open a bank account. If I like it there, maybe I'll purchase a property there. So if things do go worse, then I might be able to pick up another residency through that. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. How is your Mandarin?
I probably know about 200 or 300 words. I know enough to know when my wife is talking crap about me. To my wife and my daughter, when they're like gossiping, blah, 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 I can kind of follow along. And I know enough to get myself out of trouble with my wife if I make a mistake or if I put my foot in my mouth, I can apologize to her and tell her how beautiful she is and that I love her in Chinese and things. So.
That's awesome. Okay, we're going to wrap it up, Mikkel. You're obviously a guy with a wealth of knowledge. So if we do want to, first of all, work with you, what's the best way to get in touch for that?
Okay, if you are a high net worth individual, if you're running a startup, if you want to do these in a tax efficient manner, then just email me directly it's Mikkel, Mikkel, at expatmoney.io. I encourage you guys all to follow along on the podcast. If you go to expatmoneyshow.com or Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, Stitcher Radio, basically anywhere that popular podcasts are found, and you type in Expat Money Show, you're going to find me there. Otherwise, you can grab my book on Amazon. It's called Expat Secrets, How to Pay Zero Taxes, Live Overseas, and Make Giant Piles of Money. Super humble title, I know. I'm a very humble guy. That's how I roll. So pick that up. I was very fortunate. It went to a #1 bestseller. We've sold tens of thousands of copies and helped a lot of people with it. But that's it. Happy to help anywhere I can, guys. Great. Anywhere I can.
Fantastic list of resources. And obviously the podcast is a great starting point too. If you just want to dive into your all these master classes, as you called them, buy the book, go to the podcasts, and then get yourself to become a high net individual, and you can work with Mikkel directly. That's it, Mikkel. Thank you for joining me. Any other last words you want to throw in before we hit that stop button?
No, last thing I will mention is on the school side, we've recently created an online program for high school students. It's actually a juniors program, middle school and high school. So if you guys are in international family and you're looking for a solution for education for your kids, you guys can go to expatmoney.io. My partner has over 30 years experience in education. He worked in Montessori schools. It is a phenomenal option for anybody from the education space for their kids, ages 8 to 19. You guys can find out more at expatmoney.io. That's the big project I have on the go and my real passion project. So happy to help you guys from that aspect as well. But otherwise, good.
Oh, great. Well,
I think.
Thanks for throwing that in. That's
a whole conversation on that. So
children. So yeah.
I would just slide it in at the end, and we'll talk about it next time.
For sure. I mean, homeschooling, teaching kids while you're traveling around the world, that is a big question for a lot of people. Even the fact that it's possible, I think, is a great outcome from listening to you talk, Mikkel. So yeah, keep up the good work. Hopefully we'll bump into each other, whether it's in Canada or Panama or Ukraine, perhaps. You never know.
Come on.
And look forward to watching
Nice one. Thanks, Yaro, for the opportunity. Happy to be here.